it just occurred to me. I was just reading just this morning, I think. There's something, maybe you know, I'm sure you know more about this than I do, but a thing called blind vision, where people who once were able to see, who lost their eyesight, were given an image, and they were asked to describe on which side of this image is the box. And they said, well, you know, the response usually is, "Oh, I don't know, I can't see." Well, guess. Well, people that had been previously blind or sighted and are now blind can more accurately tell what side of the box is on the image, because there's a part of their brain that is still processing the information. It may not be the vision center, but it's still happening. And I'm just wondering if you have any insight into like neurology or the things that are happening in our mind, in our brains that are on this continuum. You know, we're animalistic on the one extreme, and on the other extreme, we have so much potential that we don't even know what we can do.
Yeah, I'm really pleased you kind of divided it then, because we don't realise that the mental plane actually is in two parts. I say mental plane, the mind, you know, that whole kind of sphere. Mm-hmm. We often only use the analytical side of things, like you said, which is a very masculine way of approaching things. It's like compartmentalisation. It's, you know, patriarchy loves living there. Definitely not want to come down to the heart. But irrespective of sexes, the mental plane in itself is in two parts. The majority of humanity only can function if they get to that point. Some people are brilliant at it. Some struggle because they are more heart-based people or more emotional-based people, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. But they often, if they get to that mind space, only kind of use it to analyse, to critique, we use it to study, we use it for all those kind of things. We don't actually get to the other part of it, which it's not really intuition because that's more soul, but it's hard to find the language because, to be honest, the English language falls quite short in describing these kind of things. Mm-hmm. But to have an understanding that there's another part of the mental plane that if we could access it would give us an entirely different perspective of all that is. You know, we even talk of sometimes like the third eye, and sometimes, once again, the new age, like open up your third eye, you can see these things, close, you know, your other eyes. There is truth to that. We do have the capacity to train ourselves to overcome just, let's say, the status quo. Just think of how you progress through school because you are trained, because you have teachers, because you have guides. We can go beyond what we've kind of hit the limit and hit the roof of if we choose to. We can go beyond just the analysis of every day to start to open up and develop a part of ourselves we don't know exists. This, of course, isn't easy. Most people don't want to do it because why would they? They're quite comfortable in their bubble. Mm-hmm. It means you have to go beyond what you're comfortable with, beyond what you're familiar with. Start questioning, you know, open up your mind to even the possibility that there is something more. That, for some people, makes them really excited and curious and they want to go off and read different things. For other people, they're like, this is it. I get up, I go to work, I come home, I eat, I shower, I go to bed. Some people want to live like that. That's okay. They're crystallized in their world. Others want to evolve and grow as souls. And they are the ones that will find their way. They are the ones that will then have the right guide, master, teacher, whatever you want to call it, you know, gravitate to them as well because they'll be radiating that. They'll be the ones that find that right book, that find that next school to study with and learn from until, you know, it takes them to the next phase before they then carry on again. That's how I found my life to be. Constantly hungry and searching, knowing there is more. So it depends where you fall. Do you believe that there's more to life or do you believe that everything's black and white? If you're just using that one part of the mental brain, you believe things black and white. If you believe there's a whole spectrum out there that we haven't even seen, colour, literal colour beyond our wildest imagination, literal sound, all the senses that, you know, we use to a fraction of its capacity have so much potential, and we, I believe, once again, that perfect kind of utopian humanity, if we got there, we'll be able to, you know, access. So I guess it's a very personal thing. For me, I believe there's so much more, and I'm excited by that, and that's why I devote myself to learning things like esoteric psychology and the mysteries of life and anything that's going to challenge my mental capacity so that I can grow it. Because we know it's like a muscle. You know, like you go to the gym and you lift some weights and you can strengthen those muscles. You make little tears in the muscle so that then it can expand more and grow more. Sometimes we have to do that. We have to break old synapses. We have to break old patterns to be able to reconstruct something that is greater, more advanced, more evolved. So that's kind of a way of looking at it, I suppose. Just my humble opinion.
That's good. So speaking of pressing into areas or unknown and unfamiliar or even uncomfortable areas. Your expertise or your guidance in sacred sexuality, the tradition that I live in is Christianity, and there's just very little attention paid to human sexuality in this tradition. I mean, there's a book, the Song of Solomon, which is just two people delighting in each other, a couple delighting in each other, and then there's a few verses from the Apostle Paul, which are utilitarian at best. Sacred sexuality is not something that is familiar to me, maybe not my listeners. So could you maybe take us through what that is?
Sure. How long do you have?
As long as it takes.
I'm just joking. It's about having, and once again, like we're just talking about, knowing that there's more. Sometimes we get given a book and we get told that is everything. Study it, learn it, practice it. It will answer all your questions. And then other times we go, hang on a minute, what is it? You might have been one of those children in class who were like, no, what about this? And you question what you're given. To me, Tantra enables people to question. There is a different perspective on seeing things. Sexuality, exploring that, on your own, ideally who you can trust and share a real intimate time with, can be a sacred act. And not just to produce, a child into the world, which is a magical experience, but to create and birth into the world more love, to create consciousness. So as an example, if I had a couple who are with me and everything I do, for the record, is fully clothed, there's no genital touch, I sit back, I let them connect. They might just sit in front of each other even, or sit side by side as I explore things, give them ideas, and then they might want to share things in that space together. And then, of course, I encourage them to go home where they get to really explore the intimacy. So just to set that as a premise. But my main role in that space, often for people who don't necessarily want to adopt this as a way of life, because it can be, it means we look at everything through a sacred lens, but just perhaps in the bedroom from the sexuality perspective, they might have been together for 20 years and they love each other, but they've lost a connection. They've lost themselves along the way because there's been children and career changes and maybe a move of state or whatever it is. So in that space, and this is just one example, I want them to recapture the concept of intimacy, to see each other again, not just as the physical body, not just as maybe the mother and father of their child, not just as, oh, it's my husband or my wife, but as a beloved. So we look at the symbolism of Shakti and Shiva. Shakti is the goddess, Shiva is the god. Together, when they merge, they are the whole. Like I talked before of day and night and summer and winter, like the yin-yang symbol, like salt and pepper, they go good together. We want to understand that we have a harmony when we come together. And if we can love each other and support each other on the emotional level as much as we can in the bedroom, it can shift the dynamic. But this means we need to, A, create time and space. So sometimes it's important to schedule lovemaking or a loving time. That might just be having snuggles on the couch. It might be cooking dinner together when phones are away and TV's off. So intimacy, even when we're talking sexually, starts long before the actual act of lovemaking. Intimacy needs to be nourished and nurtured along the day, throughout the day. So having an awareness of that, knowing every little thing you do can come from a place of that loving kindness, of offering each other, of listening, of sharing, really. But first of all, to create that space. And then we want to look at something like communication. It's like the big C word in relationships. How do we talk to each other? Do we have patience? Do we raise our voice? Do we get aggressive? To be able to hold space for someone and create intimacy and deep love in lovemaking, you have to be able to communicate with love. You have to be able to invite and offer, not dictate. You have to be able to hold someone when they need to release or cry or share or talk about their day. Now, for women especially, they require of the man to be seen and held and heard and cherished, which requires the man to be able to hold that sacred space. That is the masculine. He is the space holder. He can take her in his arms or lift her onto his lap, as we do in Tantra, and hold her, and she can wrap around him, and nothing needs to happen. You can even be fully clothed, or you can just stand in the kitchen and wrap around each other. It doesn't matter. I'm just talking this more on an intimate level. But to deeply hold someone for as long as they need to be held, not like, okay, yeah, I've got to go now, got to do this, got to walk the dog, got to go see John, whatever it is. They're fully there. Presence and communicating not just with words but with their body. Because I tell you what, even if a woman may not be extremely intuitive or whatever it is, or she may not think she is for the record, she will know if her beloved, her husband, her partner, her boyfriend is not fully present. Even if he says he's listening, even if he's looking right at her, she will know if he's actually thinking of, the basketball score, or he's thinking of something else, or he's about like 1 foot out the kitchen door. So you need to be fully there. Because if you want to be fully in your relationship and you want this to evolve and last and grow together, you have to be there with your beloved. Really there. So that's just a couple little things to think about, which will then make you feel more trusting of each other, more relaxed around each other, more open, more soft. Not like in an argument where it's a competition and one of you has to win. All these things kind of break away, and things that no longer serve start slipping away, and things that really matter are now being nourished. And more than ever, you actually want to unite intimately. You want to share those kisses. You want to touch. You want to explore. You want to merge with your beloved. So that's just one way, as an example, if you feel like you've lost the intimacy, how to reconnect. And even for new relationships that often get carried away with sometimes the honeymoon phase of heaps of, sexual exploration, but maybe not as much heart or consciousness. So wherever you can, to bring in that presence, to bring in that love and communication, to bring in holding space, to really listen. All these factors can actually change the intimacy and the sexuality of your life. And to me, that's on the path of spirit, because it's connecting to love. The Christ was all about that. Love. I don't feel any of us, no matter what denomination, have fully embodied that yet, really. Maybe a few who are really enlightened, but not collectively as a consciousness, humanity, Yeah.
I love that you talk about holding sacred space. Can you say a little bit more what that means to you? What is sacred? What is?
Yeah. If we look at it simplistically, so it doesn't get too complicated, I suppose, sacred can be anything that resonates with you. And let's keep to couples for the sake of this discussion. It could just mean lighting a candle, no music, no phones, and putting on some gentle music, and maybe sitting on the couch and talking about your day. Or maybe you light a few more candles and you put a few cushions on the ground and the children aren't home, or maybe you don't have children and you choose to lay together on the ground, but maybe by the fire, just connecting. Maybe you undress, maybe you just hold each other. In that space, there is nothing but both of you, ultimately moving closer to merging as one. That is sacred. We aren't distracted. We aren't disconnected. We're fully present. It can be simple. You can create a sacred space in an instant, or you can spend all afternoon, converting your entire backyard into some amazing wonderland, whatever resonates. But it doesn't have to be complicated. And this is an opportunity to also talk to your beloved. What does that mean to you? How would you like us to explore this? Should we try this? I'd love to do that. How does this make you feel? When we can start to have a conversation, ideally both partners are at least open to a conversation. We can start to understand what sacred means to me, to you, to us, how we can nourish this, how we can bring this into our lives, how we can explore this once a week, once a fortnight, a monthly, ritual, a monthly date, whatever it is. Because we miss a connection to the sacred, and it doesn't just have to be in church, in temple, on the yoga mat, whatever that is, wherever perhaps you've sought it before. First and foremost, it has to be within yourself. And then from there, that extension has to be with your beloved, especially if you want to, bring children into the world or raise children with a consciousness of love and respect and fostering how relationships can be really successful because you invest in them. Because let's be honest, we know how things like, let's say a pot plant, if you don't water it and give it sunlight and sometimes talk to it, I like to talk to my plants, give it the standard nutrients it needs, it's going to die. That is the same as a relationship. It might last a little longer on the outside, but it'll be dying on the inside, even if you aren't separated or divorced or sleeping in separate bedrooms. So this ultimately comes back to nourishing something that you've chosen to commit to, that you said you wanted, perhaps for forever and a day. So you're being asked to step up and do the work. And for some people, it's like, oh, that's a lot of work. Yeah, sometimes for some relationships, it's a heck of a lot of work. But if you both commit to it, you can change your entire experience together. And then how you show up with your children, with your colleagues, with your family. People will start to notice a difference within you because you're fanning the flame within, because you're bringing more light. everywhere you go, purely because you started within yourself and with your beloved. To me, that's beautiful.
That is beautiful.
That's sacred.
One last thing that I want to ask you about. A number of my listeners are in later stages of life and have maybe have never been married or have lost her partner. What do you have to say to someone in that phase of life who would come to you and want some healing and want some authentic living? What would you say to someone like that?
Sure. Obviously, it's challenging because some people come with very unique experiences and they want different things. Some people want to explore their own sexual path and find how they can give themselves that. Some want to prepare to go back out there and meet a new beloved. Some actually don't want anyone. They're just like, oh, I'm beyond that phase. I just want my independence, my freedom. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to do a wide brushstroke here and kind of be relevant for everyone, often joy and purpose and connection are things that people are searching for. So if you can do the healing work, which once again is very unique, it might be because you might feel there's a disconnect because perhaps you actually haven't grieved your beloved who's passed over. You might have carried on with life and everything's fine and it may have been years, but if you haven't actually been able to grieve fully, to know that it's okay to cry and let go, and if you can do that, for yourself on your own, or if you can find someone who can assist you with that, that can be deeply healing. Because we often in this day and age, we think, no, it's fine, it's been a while now, I'm carrying on, I'm back at work, I'm doing this, I'm going to plan this trip, everything's fine, I've got my health, but you actually haven't let yourself fully just maybe break down and collapse. And that might take some people hours or days or weeks. That's the dark night of the soul time again. It means we've got to go within, So sometimes the challenge is actually creating time and space to go within. For me, I like to have a morning practice where every single morning before I choose to meditate, before I connect with myself, and it can be anything. It could be before you pray, to go in and ask yourself, how am I feeling? Or what am I feeling? And some days you might be like, I'm fine, nothing. But if you kind of give that a bit of love and time and space to expand, you might be able to get to a point where you're like, actually, I'm sad. I can feel my heart aching still. I feel disconnected. My body, it just longs to be held. Now, if you can kind of follow that thread down the rabbit hole, you will get a point, ideally, where you know where this has stemmed from, where you can perhaps go back to that moment and finally cry those tears, write out how you're feeling, be able to communicate with someone, seek some guidance or help, but you have a deeper understanding of what's going on with you. You're starting to know yourself. You're starting to feel into your truth. No more illusions, no more, just carrying on and being tough, actually being real with yourself. That can be deeply healing. So even a couple of minutes in the morning to ask, what am I feeling? To me, can be quite revelationary in the sense of moving towards your joy, moving towards connection when the time comes. And after that simple question, you can then actually bring your energy to even your heart space, if that resonates with you, and ask, what do I want to feel? So you're giving yourself the opportunity to know, A, it's possible I can feel something else besides what I'm feeling right now, and B, I can shift my perspective and help myself get there. This is empowering. This is knowing that you can turn to yourself. You can also turn to your heart. You can turn to your soul. You can turn to the highest version of you. You can turn to the Christ. You can turn to God, Goddess, universe, whatever you connect with. That's beautiful too. But I want you to know that all of that is within you because we're all cut from the same fabric. We're all part of that. So what am I feeling and what do I want to feel? If you want to sit in like a contemplation of this and start to do that inner work, you will start to deeper know yourself, know your truth. You will find a different beauty and love within yourself when you start to let these kind of dark aspects that you may have neglected or pushed really, really far down, bringing them to the surface. While it may be temporarily painful, as nothing lasts, as we know, everything changes, it's going to enable you then to actually feel more joy moving forward, to perhaps have some clarity and clear some space to then perhaps reconnect with some purpose in your life, or to perhaps be freer and more open to have a connection, maybe even just with a friend or a guide or perhaps a new beloved who you want to share your life with. Because we don't have to be alone, and we're not islands. We're not actually meant to be alone. We are stronger together. It doesn't mean you have to go get married again, or it doesn't mean you have to have even intimate relations with someone. You have your own boundaries. You've got to honour those. But being open to explore possibilities at this point, if you are finding yourself isolated or if you are recovering from, from loss, it's wonderful to know that there is sunlight behind the clouds. It's just the clouds that need time to part. And if you go within and do a bit of work and sit with this and contemplate and start knowing more of your truth, you will find that there'll be new beauty in that. And it's kind of like you'll be able to rebirth. Like spring, the flowers can reblossom, even if it feels like you're in winter right now. So I trust that kind of answered the question, John. And all of that, that can be tantric. That can be sacred. It's a way of life. And to me, Tantra is a way of life. But if you relate to, the Christ or God or Buddha or whatever it is, you can relate that also to your ethos and your way of being and weave it into your daily prayer or daily contemplation or whatever it is that resonates with you. Honor your truth. That's what I say above all else.
Awesome. I think people are going to find that really helpful. I thank you very much. And thank you for coming on the show here. And how can people find out more about what you do?
Sure. The best way to connect with me, John, is on my website, which is stellamuse.com, and that's Stella with an A. There's lots of articles up there. If you have specific questions or you feel that you'd like some assistance or guidance, you're welcome to email me at elise@stellamuse.com, and I'll be in touch.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, John. It's been a pleasure. I'm really honoured and grateful to share this and have this conversation with you today, and I trust all the beautiful listeners out there perhaps just get one little gem to take away with them and carry along their journey. So thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you.